Okay, we are recording. Okay, before we get started, I do want to say that we do plan to have an actual binary install for Windows natively, and there are efforts going on right now. So to install WSL, you need a relatively modern version of Windows 10. What you're looking at is a completely fresh Windows install that I did yesterday. It is stock bare bones Windows 10. You can go to this URL if you can see that, but looking for WSL2 install will get you what you need. Also, our GitHub instructions do actually show you how to install WSL under Windows 10. Let me show you that. Today, I'm going to do the upgrade to 19x path, just because Ubuntu is very Python-centric, and so it's nice to have our base level of Python be the level of Python we're using. It's going to require a couple boots. This is a VM on my Mac, so it's going to take a second for those reboots. But basically, from an administrator PowerShell, you run these commands, reboot each time that you're required to, and then download Ubuntu from the Windows Store. You can also see that explained by Microsoft right down here. And you can see here they are giving you the various commands you need. So I'm going to copy those commands. Go get an administrator PowerShell. And apologies for those of you who are Windows native folks. It's been a while for Windows for me. There, you can get to laugh because I forgot to get the actual administrator shell up. Anybody got a tip on where the heck this hides again? No, I've done it before. Like all good demos, everything must go wrong. Aha. One second.
In chat, Tommy just asked status of the project, and the high level is our testnet is out, and Gene is demonstrating how to install it right now. And our testnet currently does not support transactions on the blockchain, but we're going into beta right around the end of this month. And that is going to support transactions on the blockchain. That's going to be a hard fork getting to there. Probably will be at least one more hard fork before a release candidate. After that, or I should say there will definitely be at least one more hard fork before a release candidate after that. But we actually have a pretty mature on-chain programming environment at this point, which we have quite a lot of stuff written for already. We're pretty ahead of the game here. So yeah, you'll be seeing lots of stuff coming out very soon.
Thank you for the person who correctly pointed me in the right direction.
Yeah, Windows comes with a real shell these days.
Yes.
And they didn't fix the old one. They just left it and introduced a real one. And it's like, just use the new one. Like they have all this compatibility stuff, so they couldn't get rid of the old one. So they just
Windows, not as bad as it used to be.
yeah. Well, all this like soft fork, hard fork stuff is like old hat in Windows land. How much can we accomplish with the soft fork to our APIs?
Even though I attempted to run all the updates earlier, still.
Oh, those are just from today, Gene.
I ran it literally 30 minutes ago. That's apparently what.
That's just from the last 30 minutes.
Exactly.
I think sometimes when, depending on the setup, sometimes it can't really install all the updates at once without it becoming a little dodgy from a breakage standpoint. So it'll like install a bunch, and then after the next reboot, download a bunch more, install them, reboot, and keep doing this. It's much, much easier to make it so that the upgrade path works that way, to try and make it so it can give them all in the middle.
Yeah, we certainly can talk about going from 1.4 to 1.5, but just do me a favor of asking again once we get it running here, okay? Okay.
Plots don't change between 1.4 and 1.5, and actually won't change for the beta either. We anticipate there being a especially painful hard fork when we upgrade the plot format, and we're going to have an overlap period where old and new plot file formats are allowed when we do that upgrade.
Yeah, but we should talk about that because the it's a little bit tricky with the config file because we add features, and so you can't just copy over the config file.
Yeah, you want to use the new config file, not the old config file.
Yeah, but we apologize for that. It's a little bit messy.
Yeah.
So we're going to choose Ubuntu 18.04 long-term support. That's what LTS does.
Yeah. The upgrade path to the new plot file format is going to be straightforward. You make new plots and you throw out the old ones.
We're going to give people a window. Plus, also plotting speed should get a lot faster when we do that.
Yeah. The problem is that we changed our priorities, so we're like prioritizing the new format before we're done with our performance enhancements now. So plotting speed might not yet be faster when we come out with our new plot file format.
There we go. There is going to be an update to the proof of space paper soon.
Well, the proof of space paper right now is this academic paper that covers just the first iteration of our construction, which we are using as is. We're using a lot more than that, like ridiculous amounts more than that. They're covered by the materials we made available for the proof of space competition. And that has a spec in it, which we're going to iterate on very soon, not in any hugely material way, but we are going to iterate on it. Then I don't know what we're going to do with that. There's a huge amount of like actual like meaty mathematical stuff in the construction there, which probably should be written up for some conference or something somewhere, but conferences really, really don't like covering like really painful, detailed software implementation things. So it's not really clear what the right venue is for it, because it's very meaty, both from a math and from a software engineering standpoint, and nobody really likes dealing with those.
Also, for folks who don't know about it, the repo wiki has quite a bit of additional documentation in it. While we're waiting for WSL Ubuntu to download, let me show you that. It's the wiki button on right there. Oops, went too fast. But down here on the consensus algorithm summary, and these are kind of step walkthroughs to get you comfortable with how this is working, what the code base kind of looks like. So an excellent resource there. Also, what does K generate plot size wise and how big? And to back up, just so everybody knows what we were doing for those who just joined, first we're going to install WSL2. You can either use the Microsoft set of instructions or on our readme.md in the repo. There is instructions to do this. What we're going to do is, now that we've got Ubuntu 18.04 installed, we're going to follow the path to upgrade to Ubuntu 19x. Okay. And what we've done so far is we've completed the administrative PowerShell commands, rebooted, and we've just installed 18.04 LTS.
And we're upgrading to Ubuntu 19 because it supports Python 3.7 out of the box.
That's right. And there will be these sorts of pauses as Windows works through all of its things. I do know that this probably goes faster on your native machine. I'm running this in VMware or Virtualbox, but on a decent machine. While we're waiting, I'll talk about moving from 1.4 to 1.5. I would suggest shutting down your service, changing the Chia blockchain directory to like chia-blockchain-old, get cloning a new Chia blockchain directory, build in that, and then there's going to be differences, basically additions to the conf.yaml. And you've now got your old conf YAML, so you can see if there's anything you need to update or change in the new one. Odds are you probably won't. What you'll need to do, hang on one second, is you'll need to bring your keys and plots.yaml from your old configuration directory to your new configuration directory. That will keep all your plots, all the plot keys working. The other thing you need to do is, depending on where you put your plots, you may need to either move your plots into your Chia blockchain directory, or you can create a symbolic link to where your plots are by deleting the plots directory in the Chia blockchain directory and doing like an ln-s, /volume/ really big drive /plots. And that way you can keep your plots kind of outside of the working directory for the project. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do.
There is also the, I just want to add one thing. There is also the config setting gene where you can specify where the plot should be. And so if you're doing that in 1.4, then you just want to make sure that when you get cloned the 1.5 folder, that you change that in the 1.5 as well to point to your real plots.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the update management system for Ubuntu to tell it, hey, we really do want to move up to not the current long-term support, but the newest one. Pull that down a little bit. And what you see is that we want to change the prompt LTS to prompt equals normal. That's down here at the bottom. And then save and exit. First, you want to then update Apt Database by saying, hey, let's do an update here. This will take a moment. Okay. Then we're going to upgrade the files that are, the packages that are already on board. So the -y is just so you don't have to say yes. You can absolutely ignore the -y if you want to. You don't have to type yes once in a while or y.
Okay, so I think that a problem that I have, can you paste screenshots or no? To the
You
chat.
can paste a screenshot. You can certainly put it in Keybase.
Just send it out to Keybase testnet.
Testnet.
I'm just not getting the line to insert command when I type the update manager.
So you're not getting like Ubuntu, this part right here running?
No, I'll put it in Keybase real quick.
Yeah, please.
I can figure out how to do it on the.
Usually you'll see that you'll now have a actual ability to launch your Ubuntu instance now from your launcher system. That's named completely popped out of my head, but that. Okay, so now you've got a fully up-to-date version of Ubuntu 18.04, but now we need to go to 19. So this is the magic command to take us to 19. For those of you newer to Linux, sudo means run this as root. The do release upgrade is a part of the Ubuntu package management system. Somebody asked about Docker. Certainly Docker would be easy, and there are some of you who have attempted it. We would love to, add that. But unfortunately for us, we all want this to be able to be run natively as well. So it was more of a nice to have than a have to have. The other path, by the way, for folks running Windows right now is to download VirtualBox and just install Ubuntu 19.10 as a virtual instance on your Windows machine directly instead of kind of indirectly with the Windows subsystem for Linux. VirtualBox is used to be Sun, now Oracle, but it's open source. Generally not going to take an hour because I have a gigabit symmetric connection. So it may take a few minutes.
This should be recorded, right, Gene? So you can go back and play it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Obviously, Gene's connections can be faster than everybody else's.
Hopefully. Everybody is working from home, so you're competing with a few Netflix streams, I'm sure. Yeah, we seem to be moving nicely. Somebody said that they're stuck on installing. If you're installing the Windows Store, sometimes it'll take a moment before it actually gets going, and then it takes off. So while we're waiting, a lot of people kind of ask, what's my best way to plot files, or can I like farm from a Raspberry Pi? I wanted to kind of talk about the best plotting machine is going to be something running NVMe 2. Basically, those drives and that drive interface can basically sustain writes around 3 gigabytes per second. And so you're kind of approaching RAM speeds. SATA 3 is about 5 times slower. So even a nice SSD on SATA 3 is going to be slower. What we're doing and what we expect others will do is you'll take and plot on something that has that faster small drive. Right now, you need 5 times the space of, that you're trying to create plots for to then create a plot. So you kind of need a relatively large amount of that SSD. That should come down, but even before then, the best idea here is to plot on that fast machine, but then once you're done, move it to something slow, something old, something cheap. So, you know, I have a MacBook Pro here. I can plot really quickly on it. And so I'll run a plot overnight, and then I can move it over to USB 2 storage attached to a Raspberry Pi. Because once the plot's created, it's just a big file. So as long as you move that big file around, then you can have it set up so that like farming happens on really cheap, really low end hardware, maybe really old hardware. That'll be more than adequate to harvest and farm moving forward. But on a plot side, you know, you'll for now want to be on a slightly faster machine to get the plot created.
So I bought an NVMe drive.
Yep.
Right. That's what I would use to plot.
Yeah.
Now I can once I've created that plot, I can put it onto say like an external 10 terabyte hard drive or something.
Exactly. So what you do is, you know, you create the plot there. Once it's done, move it off, adjust the configuration file to point to it, right? And then do your next one.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there a target for, you said that right now it's about 5 times as big. Is there a target that y'all are trying to bring it down to?
The target we're more sure of is how fast. Right now, per gigabyte write of the total plot, we want to take it down by at least a factor of 3, if not a factor of 5, right? So it'll be considerably faster. I know that we'll probably cut the temp space probably in half, but that's a little less well known as far as how much smaller we can actually make that. Part of that being because we're more concerned with the total speed, and it may make some sense to use a little more disk to be able to plot a little faster. But that's kind of to be seen over the next week or two.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's the deal with plotting. The optimization necessary to plot faster are really, really weird. The bottleneck in plotting right now is, well, the bottleneck is always going to be I/O, being I/O bound, except in truly extreme cases. And so it's all a game of how few passes can you do over the disk. And we can definitely easily get a factor of 2 reduction in that. And possibly another factor of, you know, 3 or 4 on top of that, but we shall see on that one. That's a whole bunch of very involved algorithmic work to make that happen. But in terms of working space necessary, that's currently around a factor of 5. That will probably land on about a factor of 2. Possibly even substantially less than that. But again, involved algorithmic work. And these are kind of constant factors that you know, hit a limit at some point. You can't plot faster than it takes to just write out the file at the end. So everything is what is your constant factor on top of that?
So another question that popped up was, should I have a bunch of small plots or should I have one big plot? For right this second, you don't want to have more than about 50 plots per hard drive. That's a limitation of the alpha. It may not be a limitation of the beta. The only reason is that the lookups get to be a little bit expensive if you have that many small plots on that drive. Now, we're probably going to increase that by, we originally were talking about 256.
And it's probably still going to be
back.
256. It's going to be less than 256 on testnet.
Yep.
But probably it's going to be, so basically just 1 in 256 times it has to do the lookup. So that's going to, increase our amount of lookups by a factor of 256 right there. The problem is when it starts interacting with latency on lookups, blah, 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 blah. A lot of this has to do with whether we go to partials, which is still not super clear, or whether and how we go to partials, although it probably won't make that much of a difference.
And partials are that more than one person will win part of the block. There are some security reasons why that might make more sense.
Yeah, we're considering changing it so that each block is made by like 9 peers instead of being made by 8 farmers instead of being made by 1 farmer, and they kind of split the rewards amongst all of them. That has some advantages and some headaches for what get to be extremely convoluted and involved technical reasons.
But the answer is that I think most people are going to want to, sorry, I was trying to answer a question, want to use relatively small plots, just because then if you need the space for something else, you can delete a smaller plot and get that space back in smaller increments. That said, we're also likely to move the minimum to probably k equals 30. Right now, that's obviously not the case because of the amount of time it takes to plot, but by the time we're toward release candidates, we expect to be plotting fast enough that k equals 30 won't be hard. And k equals 30, I think, generates about a 25 gig file. Let's look. $24. One of the questions was, how do I change the prompt? You use the command line in the README that basically says that. Nano is an editor, so it'll pop up in an editor. You can go down the bottom and change it, and then Control X or Control S are ways to save. Sometimes Control S doesn't work right. Long story about how Unix terminals work. And yes, you can, the time that you need to change the Etsy Update Manager release upgrades is when you're trying to move from 1804 to 19.
The thing is that for me, I have an SSD on the external connected by a USB, and it has a pretty good read speed. And the thing is that I'm trying to have the plot speed done there. So I've heard you in the beginning, you were like, you can symbolically configure it in that. So because I don't think I can have an NVMe because it's not compatible with my device. So I thought, I'll get an SSD for that, but it's an external SSD. But it does the job in terms of the write speed. So I was thinking, like, can I have the plus there, like, use the commands from the directory to plot it in that, so that I have, because I don't have much space on my my device at the moment.
Yeah, so absolutely you can. And once we get installed, I'll kind of like show you in pseudo code how to do that. Pseudo command line, I should say. I will tell you that unless you've got USB 3.1 Thunderbolt, you'll be slower than if you were internal on SATA. But you may have 3.1, and USB 3.1 is nearly NVMe speeds. It's just a little slower.
That's what I talk about if you just wanted to try some things now. If you want to plot to that external drive, you can run Chia from like your internal hard drive, and then you can change in config.yaml there's a setting that lets you set which folder to plot to, and so you can configure that to point to that external disk. Another way you can do it is with symbolic links. Gene can explain that. He's a little bit more up to date on that. Or you can even run the Chia program from that external drive and just have it plot to that plots subdirectory inside the repository. So any of those things will work with the external drive.
So the actual main Git clone has to be on the internal, right? It cannot be in the external.
It could
No,
be.
it can be on the external. You can run it from the external. And if you run it from the external, then it'll default to the plot subfolder in the repository, which will be on the external as well.
All right. Looking forward to that.
That would probably be the simplest way to do it.
All right.
Bill, I know we added it. Where is it in here?
Are you looking for the setting, Gene? It's at the top. All the way at the top? All the way up to the top.
That's line 1.
That's line 1?
Yep.
Oh, here it is. It's plot root under harvester.
Oh, yeah. There we
Plot
go.
root.
Yep,
There
because
you
it was
go.
commented out.
So you got to uncomment that, and you can change the. We always call our external plotting drive POS, but you can change it to whatever you want.
Proof of space.
Proof of space. That's what it's called.
That's what it's called.
And so if you uncomment that and I guess give it that absolute or relative directory of where the plots are, do they all have to be in that specific directory, or can you have a list of directories, or I guess how would that work if your plots are in multiple different places?
That's what it would default to, but you can actually
Yep.
go in the plots.yaml file and very specifically tell it where exactly each particular plot is.
Gotcha. Okay.
A question popped up. If you plot 2 different machines, same key, same index, are those plots identical? I believe they are identical for all purposes that matter, though they may compress slightly differently, so they may not exactly binary.
No, they are basically identical. Yeah. So
Okay,
if you're using the same keys and the same index, the file name should actually be the same. The plot ID should be the same in the file name, and the file should be exactly the same. So, if you guys ever have an issue where you have a plot that doesn't work correctly, for example, if you're willing to share your keys, because this is all just test plots, obviously. If you share your keys and the K value and the plot number, we should be able to regenerate that plot here, for example. So it's all deterministic.
Now, a new feature in 1.5 is that you can actually give it the index that you want to create. So you can now say, hey, I want to start at 3 or 5 or whatever to make yourself and your life a little easier. The question there, the key's meant to be public key anyway. There's a key pair. You need your secret key to be able to generate the plot file. And that's the one that you don't normally want to share, but hey, this is testnet.
Yeah.
There's also a script that isn't really well documented called check plots. It'll let you see if the install thinks your plots are okay.
Yeah, if you're having problems when you're running Chia and it doesn't look like you're farming, then run that first, and that'll tell you if the plots are valid, or at least they're what's the word I'm looking for? They're correct.
Correct. Yeah. I'm going to skip this. This is not a big problem. This is just Debian complaining. Almost there for a reboot.
Yeah, this seemed to be my roadblock that I hit before with updating. I know it says change prompt LTS to prompt normal, but it's not letting me input commands into Ubuntu.
Are you in Nano? In other words, do you have a little like caret command stuff down at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, I see that.
This yeah. If you're aware, you posted on Keybase.
Yep.
Hit Control X, say yes, and then you'll be back to the command line for Ubuntu.
Oh, Control X.
Control X.
Save modified buffer.
Say yes. Y.
Okay.
And now you're back to the command line, and you can continue with the instruction. We'd originally planned to go an hour, but obviously Ubuntu's taken its time. We'll happily go as long as we need to get going, and also show you guys a little bit of what we're talking about.
Somebody has a question about multiple harvesters, which is a good question. It's pretty advanced though.
Yep. So you can run multiple harvesters either locally or remotely. It's primarily kind of designed for you to be able to run it remotely. So you might have, say, 2 different machines in your house. You know, one's a Pi sitting behind your TV, and the other one's like in your office. In your office, you might run the full node, the farmer, and the harvester there for plots that are attached to it. But then on the Pi, you can actually just run harvester only. If you look inside the run farming script, you'll see the actual commands. They're like Python-M. In that one, it's going to be Python-M, I believe, srv.harvester, though we can look at it once this is all downloaded. And that'll run the harvester. And if you set the config YAML correctly and tell it that the farmer you want to connect to is the one in your office, then all of a sudden it'll be farming. The other farmer will have 2 harvesters connected. So all the drives on those 2 different logical machines will all be on one big farm.
All right. So on the secondary harvester machines that aren't running the farmer, you would just download the Chia repository, and then, like Gene said, all you need to do is run the harvester, which is one of the lines in that run farming script. You don't need to run everything else, just run the harvester. And then before you do that, make sure you go into config.yaml and look at the harvester preferences. Yeah, so you see right there, all you need to do is start harvester on those harvester machines. And then go to the config.yaml. Gene, can you go to config.yaml?
Yep.
And yeah. And just go down to the harvester. Yep, config YAML. Go down to the harvester settings, and you'll see farmer peer. And so in farmer peer, you'll change the host to be the IP address of the machine you have running the farmer. And the harvester should connect to that farmer, and then you'll have multiple harvesters connecting to that farmer. And so all the plots you have on all these different machines will feed into the farmer. But that's pretty advanced.
Yep.
Most people are just running one harvester, one farmer.
Yep. Also, you know, if you're doing that, one of the things you could do is you could use SMB or NFS and share the file system instead of having harvester do the harvesting.
Yeah. That's even more advanced.
Yep.
Yeah, but so the other question is, the harvester needs the change to talk to the farmer, correct? And that's correct. So that's all you have to do. So the harvester is the first thing it tries to do is talk to the farmer, and so all you got to do is change that one setting, and it'll know where to talk to the farmer.
So what this is go ahead.
Oh, by the way, something related to what people were talking about before. In the future, when we upgrade plot file formats, it will intentionally not be possible to regenerate a plot file once you delete it. Your plot file will kind of be dedicated towards your farmer, so only your farmer will be able to use it because it will include your farmer's key, but it will also have its own key. And by design, when you wipe out the plot file, that plot file is completely gone. Now, you're not losing anything here because a new plot file has the exact same utility as an old plot file. It's just as a security measure, we don't want old keys sitting around threatening to do reorgs of the blockchain. Just heads up on that. So don't get too used to a workflow where you're regenerating plot files. That's not going to be a thing going forward.
Yeah, and there's a question about running a full node and farmer on a full node farmer and harvester on all your machines instead of like doing cluster like we were talking about before. And yes,
Yeah.
you can obviously do that.
Yeah, so you want to run harvesters on the actual physical machines that have plots on them. And then you really only want to run one farmer for your whole org, whatever your organization is.
So you could, but it's going to be about key management. You're going to want your farmer to be more secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But it's a little easier that way. Well, yeah, there's also a question about wallets. You can also have any number of farmers and point them all at the same wallet that they're going to in the end.
A lot of you asked, you know, hey, why do I see weird things about how many testnet coin rewards I've won? All of the testnet kind of coin winning billboards are grubby hacks, because the way that you're going to keep track of your winnings is going to be your wallet, and your wallet will come out in the beta here at the end of the month. So moving forward, you're going to have a much prettier interface that'll show you what you won on testnet from a full wallet interface in Electrum, right, Bill?
That's right. Maybe I can find a screenshot of it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'll send it over to you. Or I'll put it on testnet.
We are close to actually having 1910. Waiting on man pages. If the installer asks you if you need to restart services during, the answer is generally yes. Somebody asked, I went from 1.4 to 1.5 and my earnings have gone. Is that to be expected? If you didn't bring your keys.yaml and your plots, yeah, that would happen. You can still get your old plots and keys back if you didn't delete them and kind of add them. And in fact, you can have more than one pair of keys in any individual farmer, which is just a little more advanced and requires you editing the YAML file. If you've never worked with YAML before, it is all about spaces. So the spaces have to be exactly right. Don't use tabs. Now, if you did bring everything across correctly and it didn't count correctly, you're probably running into one of the bugs for the leaderboards that will be remedied here very shortly. You probably still actually, quote, have them, unquote. Bill, did you get a screenshot?
Yeah, I put it up in testnet. It's just something Strya sent me.
Okay.
So not very complete, but it is a little bit of a peek.
I believe our decision to use YAML was thought out, though not 100% sure. How to get this into my VM.
It's probably based on the Python integration, I think.
One second while I show people this. Oops. Everybody see that?
Yeah, and that was an in-progress movie from one of our developers a couple weeks ago, actually, but it looks pretty similar. And you would be seeing, if you were farming, you would be seeing your rewards deposited in Chia at the top. So it'd be your currency.
I'll run it one more time. We'll go back. Sounds like we might be done. The fans are spinning down. Okay, let me switch. Okay, everybody see me in Windows again?
I see it.
Excellent. Still waiting for it to gronk through the man pages. Any other questions as we wait for Ubuntu to love us again?
Ubuntu hates me.
So
Sure.
when you guys release your beta, I think you said that's at the end of the month or so. At that point, the plots that you would make would actually be, I guess, useful. When your mainnet launches. Is that right? Or would those also, would those plots need to be deleted again?
We're going to have one more plot change. Bram, you're muted.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the plots will work just fine. You won't have any credit for the farming you've done already when the beta comes out, but you'll start getting testnet Chia, testnet tokens immediately from farming that. And also when testnet launches, we can just give you testnet coins if you want some. But yeah, at that time you'll be able to set up a wallet and start playing with it. Actually, you don't need a lot of testnet tokens to play with it because every farming reward has 16 trillion test mojo in it. So we intentionally set it up so there's a lot of divisibility going on there. So yeah.
But to reiterate, we are going to have to change the plot format once before release candidates. And we plan to try to do that relatively soon. And we're going to have a period where both plots will work so that testnet doesn't grind to a halt. And then later we'll, switch off the old plots in a later release.
Do you want to talk about the rolling idea, Gene?
Go ahead, Bill.
Start. Oh, okay. So one thing we're going to try to do is that, like Gene said, we're going to try to make the plot format change relatively soon. We're also going to try to make it so that people can create a lot of plots and have all those plots online for at least a month or two before the main release. So they'll basically have a rolling launch so that when release actually happens, there'll be a lot of plotting storage space out there already, kind of a rolling start.
So we've reached the end of the Ubuntu upgrade. It says, do you want to restart? And then you say yes. So then you can just close the window out. I'm actually going to close the window and restart it from scratch to make sure that it's truly a new one. You'll notice, welcome to Ubuntu 1910. Woohoo. Now I'm going to go back to our README. We're going to run this command, which is going to install your underlying requirements. So this will make sure that you've got the Python 3 and Python 3 development environment, as well as CMake, which builds a lot of the underlying components. Question about how modular is the platform. It's quite modular. Earlier we were talking about that, not even long-term, medium-term, we really want to make sure that you can install this as a Windows native application. It'll still be Python under the covers, but you won't necessarily know nor care. To get a sense of how that works, you can take a look at the Electrum wallet from Bitcoin, which is a big Python install that in Windows, it just looks like you run a Windows installer, double click, and it works. Also, we invite additional implementations in other languages and other platforms. There's no reason to only use the Chia standard once you have the wire protocols and the other pieces that you can talk.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a native Windows version is definitely feasible, and probably somebody from the community could even do it if they wanted to. It's just a matter of time.
I and another guy on our team are working on it, but I'm sure somebody get there faster. OS X is basically native. It just doesn't install cleanly yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's using the Mac OS libraries and everything. So it's basically running native.
If you look at our README, it has instructions for all these different platforms, and I test these before we release each version. The Mac just happens to be down low.
Yeah, we fought some battles with Catalina, so it runs on Mac for sure.
It runs on Catalina, to be specific.
It runs on Catalina, right?
Yep. Those are the Mac OS instructions for the people who want to run it natively in OS X.
Yeah, we said it runs on Catalina. Well, we made the joke about Catalina because some of the standard library stuff that we're using, Apple only supports in Catalina. So at this moment, you'll have to use Catalina.
So we are doing some things to try to make it so that our requirements are lower and therefore older OSs can actually work. Things like
sometimes sometimes it's surprising what we find that's not supported. Because obviously all our machines are running Catalina here, so
yeah, we write Catalina in a Ubuntu
sometimes.
Almost there. So what we've done is in 1910 installed all the tools you'll need to be able to build and compile. Longer term, we're going to hand you these in binaries with a Python overlayer, and you won't have to do the build and compile steps. Okay. Now that we've got that complete, we come back and we clone our repository. Okay, we're going to cd into the repository directory. Here you can see the directory configuration that you see out on GitHub as well.
Why don't you go into the config folder, Gene, just to show them?
Sure.
That's where they're going to make all the changes.
I'm going to use Nano again. It's a nice kind of user-friendly editor under Linux.
And so here you can see like the harvester preferences where we were talking about before with the host. There's also the plot root preference we were talking about before, where you can change where your plots go if you want to specify like an external drive or a drive that's not where your Chia repository is. If you don't do that, it'll just go into the plot subfolder of the Chia repository. And there's a lot of other preferences as well that you hopefully won't have to change.
Yeah, the only ones that like you normally kind of care about are like, do you want to log to standard out or to the file? It defaults to the file now. All up to you. It's a little prettier to standard out, but then it's a little harder to do. And depending on your home network setup, there is whether or not you are doing UPnP, which is a tool to get a port so that other peers can talk to you. I have manually set up the IP addresses and port forwards for either IPv6 or IPv4 on my router. So I often turn this off. In fact, I think I'm gonna leave it on because we'll see if VirtualBox will correctly get me a port back, but we'll see. Control S, Control X to get out of there. We're still in the config directory. I'm gonna go back up.
Yeah. Let's go into scripts too, Gene, to show them that.
Yep, in scripts, you can see all the different things we actually do to start things. So cat or less is a way to see a file in Unix. We'll do run farming. When you start the VNV here, then this command lets you background these. If you don't, you just would like copy this and paste. And then the key to running something in the background is that little ampersand. Now, I'm not gonna do that because it's not compiled yet, but that's the way you kind of steal it from.
And you're not in the virtual environment yet, Gene.
Correct.
Yeah. Also, on those scripts, you can see stop all servers.sh. You run that when you want to stop these background tasks from running. There's also check plots.py. That was the script we were talking about before that'll check the integrity of your plots to make sure that they're all correct. There's no errors that happen while they're being generated. Dropdb.sh is another interesting script that'll erase the database, your local database, that just basically it's kind of like a cache, so you don't have to update the blocks from scratch every time you restart your instances of Chia. But I mean, it's not something that has to be there. Obviously, you can sync back up again from scratch if you have to.
Also, there's restart harvester. So if you're plotting new plots and everything's running and farming and harvesting, once your plot's done, you can tell restart harvester. It'll shut the harvester down, reload the harvester with your new plot from the plot's YAML file, and now you're farming a new plot. Now, back in the main directory, to install the overall project, you do sh install.sh.
And this command will install, or it'll compile everything but the Time Lord, because most people aren't going to be running a Time Lord.
Yeah, we intentionally in alpha have Time Lord separate from the full node and harvester. The Time Lord is a lot more processor specific. So a lot of its optimizations require certain very, very specific things, to the point where, like, I've started up AWS instances that are about 6 months younger than the instance I compiled on, and it wouldn't run because it's a different Intel architecture.
And we just want to stress that for people that are new to Chia, the blockchain only needs one fast, honest Time Lord on it to work correctly. So it's not like you have to run a Time Lord. If there's an honest Time Lord on the network, it'll take your plot results and it'll do a proof of time for you. So you'll be able to win your blocks.
So what we're doing is downloading Python dependencies and our own internal stuff, and then compiling pieces of that. BLS-PY is our BLS signature library with a Python wrapper.
Answering people's questions in chat. All our protocols are going to be open, so we want actually there to be a broader ecosystem. We will continue to maintain an official reference version of everything except for like smart wallets. Obviously, people are going to be writing their own of those. So any custom functionality you want, that is, it's going to be maintained by the people who wrote it, probably. But everything we're doing is open source and open protocols, and everything is Apache licensed, so you don't have to worry about us suing you over patent stuff. This is a truly open, decentralized project that we're creating here. One sets out the only clear connection it still has to us is that there's a pre-mine, or a pre-farm in this case. And that's going to be locked up for a while. The question about burst, we want to be open to burst refugees, of which I understand there are many, but we don't want to be jerks about it. So we're not proactively reaching out and trying to court burst people. Also, I at one point blocked a whole bunch of burst people on Twitter. I should probably go and undo that, and then I'll probably wind up reblocking the ones who truly are trolls as they continue to troll me. But due to just general toxicity, there are a few different communities I went and just blocked everybody from. Over time, I'm planning on undoing this for Burst and Ethereum in the future. My suspicion is almost everyone I blocked for being a Tron and Ripple troll is actually a sock puppet. So I have no plans of going and undoing my mass blocks of those people. But yeah, we want to welcome all the Burst refugees with open arms, because I do understand many of them really did want to, pursue proofs of space and smart transactions on chain, and all the stuff that we're doing. We're just doing it, better.
Better is an understatement.
Yeah. Yes.
Mathematically proven to be correct.
Yeah. Well, Burst had all kinds of other problems of, well, I don't want to get into it here, but we've heard these just ridiculous comical stories of awful, and we're just, we're making sure things are run much better around here. Trying to make it low drama.
This will install faster on your machine. That's because it's going to be in here. For those of you new to Python virtual environments, what goes on is that in the .venv directory, we're actually pulling together all of the dependencies in Python and making sure that they're all interlinked correctly inside that directory, so that when you enter the virtual environment, you know that all the dependencies are there and everything will just work. A lot of the problems people have is they try to run commands in scripts or other places without being in the virtual environment, and it'll just error in weird ways when you do that.
There's a question about, are plots strictly tied with the farmer? Can we create plots with several machines? And the answer is you need the keys. So your keys.yaml file needs to be the same in order for the plots to be eventually coalesced under one farmer. But you can plot them under different machines if you copy those keys everywhere. One interesting thing I've done is, as Bram said, plotting is typically I/O bound. So you pretty much swamp a drive while you're plotting it. But that doesn't necessarily mean the machine was swamped, especially if it has a lot of cores. So if you have like 3 or 4 drives connected to a machine, you could install like a Chia repo on each of those drives and then run plotting on each of those drives in parallel. Just make sure that the keys .yaml is the same across all of them, and make sure that you're not regenerating the same plot over and over. Again, use different indexes. So that's advanced, but that's kind of gives you an idea of what's possible.
Yeah, the flow is going to change a little bit with the new plot file format, in that each plot is going to have its own key that's local to it, that exists nowhere else in the universe, and it's going to be associated with the farmer key as well. So the true plot key is actually going to be a combination of the local plot key and the farmer key. So if you are missing either of those, it doesn't work. So you're going to set up a farmer key, and then it's important that you keep that around or you're really screwed. Or, well, I mean, not really screwed, you have to redo all your plots, but it's important to keep that around on your farmer. And then you have all of your harvesters that have direct access to all of your plots that can be on many machines. But when you start your plotting, you're gonna have to tell it what the farmer key is. And then once a plot is created, you just kind of use it, but there's no recreating it. When you want the space, you just delete it. And when you want to have want more space to be used for plotting, you have to replot. But it's not important to regenerate the exact same plot file ever again. That's kind of a mal feature. The only thing that's useful for is basically doing a 51% attack on the chain. So it's actually a liability to have keys around that have actually successfully made blocks in the past. So better you not do that.
And Chia POS is Chia proof of face. It's compiled in the background right now. I gave it 2 processor cores. I probably should have given it a little more.
Yeah, again, this is because it's running in a virtual machine.
Yeah, it's a nice MacBook Pro.
Or actually, if you were trying to compile this on a machine with less than 2 gigabytes of RAM, you might have some slowdown issues as well.
How can you enforce that key requirement via consensus? I'm not sure exactly what that question means, but things have to be signed by a key. So each plot file is associated with a public key. And then if it succeeds in making a block, that block has to be signed by the corresponding private key. And the entire format of the proof of space file is associated with the public key. So you couldn't use a plot file for one public key for any other private key at all. And if you didn't have the private key for that one, you wouldn't be able to sign a block with it. I'm at a stopping point in my cooking, by the way. I'm making spaghetti sauce right now. So I just finished browning the meat and putting the seasonings, and my kitchen smells very Italian and amazing right this moment. But now,
the great
now it's, yeah, now it's going to be some number of hours of just stirring it in the oven once an hour. So
now everybody's hungry.
Yeah, you know, the shelter in place. I set the company to all work from home starting the beginning of this month. This has been really great for me. I've been eating better. I've been on a diet for a while, but I'm losing weight faster now. Yeah, the food's so much tastier. I'm really enjoying cooking. I've been working out. I've been sleeping better. It's been great. You know, I don't have any chia seeds in the house. Actually, funny enough, I've never really practiced cooking with chia seeds. But as this goes on, I'm probably going to hit the store again and probably get dry rice and beans just to make them from scratch, because I'm putting on all this work, taking all day to make stuff. I might as well make rice and beans from scratch, because why not? But I should probably get some chia and practice cooking food with chia so I can give people chia recipes as well. I've never really tried that. I've cooked with rice and I've cooked with quinoa in the past. I'm guessing chia is probably more like quinoa in terms of flavor, but I've had like chia yogurt, which is a little more like tapioca kind of a thing. That's popular in the frou-frou vegan San Francisco things and is quite tasty. But I haven't actually made it myself, so I don't know if that flavor and texture is a result of adding a ton of sugar to it, or if that's the chia itself.
Let me hop in because we're at a good spot. I will say that we're not calling it quinoa, don't worry. I will say chia is often served at company events, though. Okay. So we're now compiled. You've now got a working directory. It's got all the pieces you need to be able to run the Chia blockchain in. You can go back here and you'll say, let's start our virtual environment.
Make sure you do this, guys.
Got to do the virtual environment.
You gotta get
Technically,
the
there are
virtual
things you can do to get around it, but don't do them. You'll notice now that you have .venv before your command prompt. That tells you you're currently in the virtual environment that we just created. Come back to the README, scroll on down past all the installs. You can skip the Time Lord. There are plenty of Time Lords on the testnet. I and Bill run most of them, but they're there.
We do have community people running Time Lords, actually.
Yeah, somebody's ahead right now. We've seen them come in and out. Our fastest Time Lord is about 153,000 IPS. Sorry,
yeah. Yeah, you can probably roughly double that or almost double that with overclocking.
Which is something we're going to get to, but not yet. Okay, so first, if you're going to farm, you got to generate some keys for the plot files. You'll notice the Python-M.
YAML.
What was that?
So that's what goes in the keys.yaml file.
Yep. So when I do this, if you look in config now, you will see a keys.yaml file. And the contents look like that. So that's your farmer secret key, your farmer public key, and then we're generating you a pool. The pooling protocol is not fully built out, but we will have a pooling protocol from day one. Pool target, and then the secret key for your plots.
And you do have 2 pools. That's for our testing.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure it worked. That's why.
Yeah.
Let's skip the full node. We're going to run a farmer in full node. Well, actually, you know what? We'll actually plot a small plot first. You see here that you can do this command to create a plot. I'm not going to follow it exactly. I'm going to create a slightly smaller one. Hey, Bill, what size do you think we should do here?
I just do 1K20. That's what I usually do.
Yeah, let me do like a 23.
Okay, do 1.
Okay, 21, good call. Every K size is a order of 2 larger. So it's a doubling of time it takes, space it takes, working space it takes. K is the kind of key driver of plot size. You can go look in the primitive space paper to understand K better, or in the wiki, there's also good instruction about how K comes together. N is how many plot files should I create. There's also now a -I, which here would be 1 implied. You don't have to do that, but later if you want to like create the 5th one in the series, you can just do that. So we'll do that right there. This is going to put our first plot in the plots directory.
Yeah, this is happening pretty fast because this is a really small plot.
It's
not likely to win anything. Yeah, if you want to win blocks, you should probably try for a K29 or higher. And a K29 will take about what, 5 hours? 5,
6, yeah, on a faster machine.
Sounds like somebody fell asleep.
Okay, so now in plots, you'll see that you have a plot file. It's an ugly binary file. Please don't open it. Your command line will not like you if you do.
And it's listed in plots YAML as well.
Yep. So if you look in config, you can see it is in plots YAML. And you can see it's got its secret key listed and the public key as well. And then this is the directory to it. You can see that it's just referencing the current Chia directory, but you could have this be absolute to wherever it actually is. So now we're going to run a farmer. And that's described right there. So
yeah, you'll actually be running a farmer, harvester, and full node.
Yep.
Can't tell who's snoring.
I'm not sure either, but farming can be exhausting. So I get it.
So I put an ampersand to make sure this all starts in the background. The Windows firewall is like, will you let Python do stuff? The answer is yes. Hit return again, you'll get a command line. I like to watch the log this way. Tail lets you look at the end of the file. -F is continue to look at the end of the file. And so there we go. It started up. It's creating your database. Right now, it's getting the headers for the entire blockchain. It will get the headers up to what it thinks is the current tip of the blockchain, and then it'll start downloading the blocks. Right now, that takes about 40 minutes, 30 minutes to get the current 35,000 blockchain.
And the reason for that is not only are you downloading it, but we're having to validate every proof of space and every proof of time, the full node.
Okay, I'm going to stop this full node because I can accelerate us into the future. I'm going to use the script stop all servers. If you look, you'll now have a blockchain database and a blockchain journal. I'm going to delete both those. just for the purposes of this. And then I have my own copy of the current blockchain hiding on this web server.
And it's worth noting, you would get exactly the same thing if you just waited an hour.
Correct. I just don't want to have everybody have to wait.
We're just going forward in time here.
We'll still have some syncing to do because I think it's probably a day or two behind, but just downloading it from technically Keybase, which is where.
You want to talk about proof of space competition, Gene? I mean, Bram?
Proof of space competition. Well,
So are you going to run another proof of space competition before mainnet launch?
no, we're not. The last proof of space competition didn't, the entries weren't very successful. It was, I guess, a little too difficult to do, a little intense on the algorithmics there. So there are a bunch of optimizations that we know about that we're now doing ourselves that you close enough to theoretical limits that I'm not going to worry about it too much, and I'm not really expecting a competition to have particularly good results, given the last one didn't go so well there. But the amount of time necessary for plotting and the amount of working space necessary for plotting is going to be dramatically lower in the future. Hopefully before mainnet, due to market conditions, we've now optimized up getting out the new plot format over speeding up the plotting process. We're trying to get mainnet sooner, basically, or be ready to if necessary, which hopefully all are excited about. But yes, things will be better in the future, but we're doing it ourselves, not with a competition.
However, assuming things moderate a touch, we're likely to run another VDF competition. And then later we'll plan to launch an FPGA competition for the VDF.
Yeah, our VDF competitions were much more successful. There's a whole lot of stuff we could do there, so not exactly sure what formats we're going to do. We're going to definitely make a CPU benchmark of VDF iterations per second and make this publicly available, and invite, it turns out the VDF code needs to be significantly different between different chips. So we are going to, once that's out and hopefully starts getting accepted as a real benchmark, start inviting chip vendors to improve the code for their chips, which might make the VDF code faster. Also hopefully gonna do a just rolling King of the Hill style VDF improvement thing where every time anyone gets an improvement on the benchmark machine, they get paid for the amount, the ratio improvement that they got in speed. With that, just as a rolling thing that's just on 24/7.
Can I hop in here, Brian?
Yeah.
Hang on. I'm going to delete the Chia log from the original run just so you can see it, how it starts up with the new database. We've got that new database here. And so I'm going to do sh scripts run farming. And then I'm going to quickly tail this so we can all see how this starts. Okay. You can see it saying initializing blockchain from disk. That's it loading the database up right now. Hey, Bill, what's the current LCA, last common ancestor?
Let me check. It is 32499.
Okay, it's almost 32500. I think this was taken at like 31,000, if I remember right, so we won't have much to sync. If you're trying to watch the web interface, it won't run yet until the actual startup of the full node. Full node is now fully started. It's grabbing various different blocks that are out there, figuring out where the tip is, and it's asking for all the header hashes to go figure out what blocks it needs to download. Now we're syncing the actual blocks because we figured out where the tip is. 32,500, right, Bill?
32,499.
Five
Well,
more.
unless it's testnet stats might be a little bit behind.
Yeah, it sometimes lags a touch. I do think we found the storing person and I muted them. Only about 100 more blocks.
Oh yeah, and we do plan on doing FPGA stuff. Unfortunately, it's looking like FPGA stuff will be post mainnet launch at this point. We will likely pay some group to make a reference version. There's been a lot of work done on RSA-based FPGAs right now, a whole lot of money and resources thrown into that. And our stuff subsumes that. It's that plus extended GCD, basically. So I'm planning on getting around to all that in the future and having competitions for it and stuff.
Almost there. Part of what's going on here is that all the proofs of space and time are being validated, most of the proofs of time, as you load these. If you start in sync from the beginning, you're obviously creating a blockchain that you have personally validated. The database I downloaded, I had personally validated, so I felt comfortable starting there.
And again, this is the VM, so it's slower.
Yeah, you'd go faster if you were native.
Also, we're not
Yeah.
gossiping around. We're also not gossiping around one Weslowski proofs yet. So
faster proofs. So we're finished syncing.
yeah. So,
let's go over here and let's show you the web interface. 8555, right, Bill?
8555, yeah.
Takes a second to load everything up. Again, we're in a virtual machine, so it's a little slower than your native Windows machine is going to be.
I believe it's getting the pools right now.
Pardon?
It's getting the pools.
Yep, which takes a little. Here you can see who you're connected to. You can see you've got a farmer connected locally. You've got other full nodes. And now you're in sync. This is the time of the last common ancestor. This is the last finished block in kind of Bitcoin parlance. Your current difficulty, the current IPS. This tells me that somebody else is running a time server out there, Time Lord.
Super fast.
That is much faster than ours. You can see each of the blocks. You can also search them by their various block hashes, see who you're connected to, and then this is the winners so far of the Chia testnet challenge.
Yes, so those are the pools right there. So you saw before in the keys.yaml, you saw your pool that you were a member of. So you would, if you want a block, you would see your pool listed there.
You go look in your pools and you say, hey, I am one of these, make it top them. And so you'd look for that 61 CDF 8 in this list. We have not won any blocks with this farmer, and we're not likely to win any blocks with this farmer.
Not with K21, no.
Yeah, but like, let's see. One of our farmers that started out very early. Where is Beast and Sumo?
Oh, they're still at the very top, but not for
Okay,
long. They're the 09F.
Okay, this is actually us. We will not farm mainnet, to be very, very clear. But for test nets, we absolutely want to have some basic farming so that it keeps running regardless of people coming in and out and that kind of stuff.
yeah, anyone who is interested in farming mainnet, the plan is actually that we won't be selling any Chia prior to mainnet launch, if ever, basically. But if you want to get Chia early, the thing to do is farm. There's going to be a period of some weeks after mainnet launch where transactions can't happen on the blockchain, but farming is going on to give everything a chance to kind of settle down with the work difficulty and make there be some liquidity in Chia that people have in their hands right up front. And we're going to make it so our default setup is going to be when you start farming testnet that it's immediately automatically going to start farming mainnet once mainnet is released and running. Yeah, so that's just what you should do. What we're encouraging everyone to do is get set up on farming testnet as if it's a real mainnet rig. And then once mainnet launches, magically it automatically starts farming mainnet as well as testnet at that time.
So you're looking at the actual block that was in contention to maybe the next major block, and so you can actually see the contents of it. Around farming before mainnet launch, but after we get the final plot format settled, we're likely to run some small fun competitions for like t-shirts and maybe hard drives. So
straw hats.
Straw hats. So you can kind of keep an eye on how your farmer is doing in the log. One of the things I want to show you is how to like look for things there. grep is a really amazing Linux tool. We're going to grep harvester chia.log. Your harvester will once in a while wake up and say, here's a plot I'm farming. So you can kind of see what's being farmed and what it believes is correct. You can also do fun things like, I hate watching ping and pong, even though I want it to happen. So I pipe my output of tail to grep. -v says, don't show me this.
And ping and pong are just basically the machines talking to one another to make sure they're still there. That's all this for.
Yep. So right now, there's nothing happening. We don't have a new block yet. And so this farmer is just kind of patiently listening to the network and waiting for new blocks to come in. And
that's a feature because the farmer and harvester should not take much overhead on your machine at all.
That's right.
They only do their thing once every time the new blocks come in, like once every 5 minutes, they'll go and they'll do a lookup on your hard disk. It shouldn't take much CPU usage at all.
We'll wait for...
So not much is going to happen, Gene.
I know. I'll pause this. It's running in the background. If you were going to plot more plots, you can kind of do that while things are running. The quick and easy way to add plots is to just make n equal 2 now. And what'll happen is it'll say, oh, the first one already exists. I'll skip it and go to 2.
You can show them how to restart the harvester too, Gene.
That was what I was going to do.
There's no need for these to be sequential. You could literally just select random numbers up to 2 to the 32nd. It would work fine. And then you wouldn't have to keep track of which ones you'd used already.
Yep. But for ease of test, the script works the way it does.
Yeah. I'm a bit uppity about how we're going to obliterate this regeneration of plots feature in the future. Or to the extent that we have it, we're going to make it a real pain in the butt to use.
So we now got a new file. You can see in plots that there's now 2. Right now, though, only one's being farmed because the harvester hasn't reread the configuration file. So what you can do is say scripts restart harvester. And if we go back and look in that log, you will see usually, oh, no, we have to restart that to get that to be seen because it's a new writer. Harvester came online and said, hey, I've got these 2 peers, and here you see the pings and the pongs.
And you can see both plots being farmed.
Yep, plot 1 here, plot 2 here. It's plot, that's plot 1, that's plot 2. Programmers count from 0. Okay. We'll let that sit in the background. What sort of questions do people have? That's how you do it on Windows. One thing I know that people asked about is, okay, so you've got your plots directory, right? And when I try to upgrade, I might accidentally delete my plots. So what you can kind of do is like move your drive to, say, the mount directory. So we'll like made it sudo because I'm sure that is there. Mounting a disk somewhere is a little beyond just explaining it right here, but you can look up Ubuntu mount disk and you'll figure it out. But now you've got a space directory there, so you can do things like move plots. One thing to be careful of when I just did that, I'll bet you that I need to change the permissions of the mount PO space directory. The way you can see those permissions is with -al. Now, the good news is they are owned by me. I'm going to see if I own the PO space directory as well. Nope, root owns that. So I'm going to use the sudo command to change ownership of that directory to me. Now I own it. I'm going to remove the plots directory now that I've moved those files. RM requires a recursive to remove a directory. Now I'm going to symbolically link, pardon me, that created a new plots directory. If you look at the extended information about it, you'll see that plots points to that other directory. And if you look inside plots, there are my plots. And harvester and farmer will still look for them there and work. Now, to be safe, I'm going to actually restart the harvester. And the harvester's working. And it sees those plots. So what's neat about that is when I come in and want to upgrade, I can basically move this directory to like Chia blockchain-old, create a new Chia blockchain directory, and then all I have to do is delete the plots directory in the new directory and do that ln-s to the place where my plots really are. As long as you bring that and your keys.yaml and your plots.yaml file with you to the new install, everything will just work. On the wiki, there's an explanation of kind of how to do that. So if you've got questions, that's a good place to go, the repo wiki. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to stop the recording here.